Sun Tzu's Art of War, Ancient Strategies for Modern Life. Welcome, everyone. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and leave your like so you don't drift off without supporting this content, and so YouTube delivers more videos like this to you. You're about to enter a calm and fascinating journey about one of the most intriguing figures who ever existed, presented in a light, fluid manner perfect for accompanying your night, your rest, or that moment when you just want to relax while learning something genuinely interesting. This video was created to transform curiosity into mental peace. Applying the timeless principles of Sun Tzu, we'll examine how ancient strategic wisdom, particularly regarding focus and rest, offers profound lessons for handling modern pressures. We'll discover the subtle parallels between military discipline and personal well-being, revealing how the art of war can cultivate mental clarity and restorative sleep. Everything narrated in a calm, measured, hypnotic, and informative way, so you absorb knowledge even with your eyes closed. Because learning can be simple, pleasurable, and silently transformative. And before we continue, how is your mind today? Is it tired? Seeking focus? Trying to sleep, but with racing thoughts? Perhaps you just want peace while discovering something new? Whatever your situation, this video will accompany you to the end. No pressure, no anxiety, just pure, light knowledge. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin our journey through the true art of war and its ancient strategies for modern life. Part 1. The man behind the wisdom. The mystery of Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu remains one of history's most enigmatic strategists. His very existence has been debated by scholars for centuries. Some believe he was a general named Sun Tzu who lived during China's spring and autumn period, around 544 to 496 BCE. Others suggest he may have been a composite of several military minds, their wisdom distilled into a single legendary figure. What we know with certainty is this. The text attributed to Sun Tzu has survived over 2,000 years, influencing emperors, generals, business leaders, and everyday people seeking wisdom in their daily battles. The historical records place Sun Tzu in the state of Wu, a kingdom constantly threatened by larger, more powerful neighbors. Wu needed more than soldiers. It needed strategy, intelligence, and a completely new way of understanding conflict. Sun Tzu provided exactly that. The king's test. According to ancient chronicles, Sun Tzu first proved his methods to King Wu in an unusual demonstration. The king, skeptical of this traveling strategist, challenged him. Can your theories of military discipline work even with untrained subjects? Sun Tzu accepted the challenge. He asked for 180 palace women to demonstrate his principles of command and organization. The king agreed, amused by the prospect. He sent his concubines to the palace courtyard, including two of his favorites, whom Sun Tzu appointed as company commanders. Sun Tzu divided the women into two companies, explained the commands clearly, and ensured everyone understood their roles. He set clear expectations. He demonstrated the movements. He confirmed comprehension. Then he gave a command to turn right. The women laughed instead. They giggled and talked amongst themselves, treating the exercise as entertainment. Sun Tzu remained calm. He said, "If instructions are not clear, if explanations are not explicit, it is a commander's fault." He explained everything again, even more clearly. He demonstrated once more. He asked if everyone understood. They indicated they did. He gave the command again. Again, the women laughed. This time, Sun Tzu's response was different. He said, "If instructions are clear and explicit, yet soldiers do not obey, it is a fault of the officers." He called for the execution of the two company commanders, the king's favorite concubines. The king, watching from above, immediately sent a message. "I am convinced of the general's ability. Without these two concubines, my food will not taste good. Please do not execute them." Sun Tzu replied with words that would echo through history. "Having received the sovereign's commission to be general of the army, there are commands of the sovereign which I cannot accept." He had the two women executed. He appointed new commanders. He gave the order again. This time, the women moved in perfect silence and precision. Left, right, forward, backward, kneel, rise. Every command was followed with absolute discipline. No one laughed. No one spoke unless commanded. Sun Tzu sent a message to the king. The troops are now in good order. The king may inspect them. They may be employed as the king desires, even go through fire and water. King Helu, shaken but impressed, made Sun Tzu his general. Under Sun Tzu's command, the small state of Wu defeated the powerful state of Chu, a kingdom many times its size. This story illustrates Sun Tzu's first principle. Strategy requires discipline, and discipline requires clarity, consistency, and the courage to enforce necessary standards. The philosophy behind the strategy. Sun Tzu was not merely a military tactician. He was a philosopher of conflict, human nature, and the invisible forces that determine victory and defeat before a single weapon is drawn. His approach was revolutionary for his time, and remains so today. Most ancient military texts focus on formations, weapons, and brute force. Sun Tzu focused on something deeper: the psychology of conflict, the economics of warfare, and the strategic value of winning without fighting. This last principle, winning without fighting, became his signature teaching. It reflected the broader Chinese philosophical traditions of his era, particularly the emerging concept of Taoism and the importance of flowing with natural forces rather than opposing them directly. Sun Tzu understood that war was expensive, destructive, and unpredictable. Even in victory, a nation could be weakened if the cost was too high. Therefore, the supreme art of war was to subdue the enemy without battle, to win through superior positioning, through intelligence, through deception, and through understanding that shaped the battlefield before armies ever met. The 13 chapters. The art of war consists of 13 chapters, each focusing on a different aspect of strategy and conflict. These chapters are remarkably brief. The entire text is only about 6,000 Chinese characters, which translates to roughly 20 to 30 pages in English depending on the edition. Yet within this concise framework, Sun Tzu addressed everything from planning and preparation to adapting to terrain, managing intelligence networks, and understanding when to fight and when to withdraw. The first chapter, laying plans, establishes a foundation. War is a matter of vital importance to the state, and therefore must be studied carefully before any action is taken. The second chapter, waging war, discusses the economic cost of conflict and the importance of speed. Sun Tzu noted that prolonged campaigns weaken both the army and the state, and that resources should be seized from the enemy whenever possible. The third chapter, attack by stratagem, introduces a famous hierarchy of warfare. The highest form is to attack the enemy's strategy, next is to attack alliances, then to attack the army, and the lowest is to attack fortified cities. Each chapter builds on the previous ones, creating a comprehensive system of strategic thinking that applies far beyond the battlefield. Part 2. Fundamental Principles for Modern Life. Know yourself, know your enemy. Perhaps the most quoted line from the Art of War is this: if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained you will also suffer defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. This principle transcends military application. In modern life, the enemy can be interpreted as any challenge, obstacle, or opposing force you face, a difficult project at work, a personal weakness you're trying to overcome, a competitive marketplace, or even your own destructive habits. Knowing yourself means honest self-assessment. It means understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, your emotional triggers, your limits, and your potential. Most people spend their entire lives without truly knowing themselves. They react to circumstances rather than responding from a place of self-awareness. Knowing your enemy or your challenge means thorough research, observation, and analysis. It means understanding not just the surface facts, but the deeper patterns, motivations, and vulnerabilities. In business, this translates to market research, competitive analysis, and understanding customer psychology. In personal development, it means identifying the root causes of your struggles rather than just treating symptoms. Sun Tzu emphasized that this knowledge must be active and current. The battlefield changes constantly. Intelligence becomes outdated. What was true yesterday may not be true today. Therefore, the wise strategist continuously gathers information, updates assessments, and adapts plans accordingly. All warfare is based on deception. Sun Tzu wrote, "All warfare is based on deception. Hence, when able to attack, we must seem unable, When using our forces, we must seem inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When far away, we must make him believe we are near. This principle often troubles modern readers who value transparency and honesty. But Sun Tzu was describing a reality of competitive situations. Your opponents will exploit any information you reveal. Therefore, strategic advantage often requires controlling what others know about your intentions, capabilities, and position. In modern life, this doesn't mean being dishonest in relationships or unethical in business. It means being strategic about what you reveal and when. Consider negotiations. The skilled negotiator doesn't reveal their bottom line immediately. They don't show desperation even if they need the deal. They maintain composure and strategic ambiguity until the optimal moment to commit. Consider personal goals. Research in psychology shows that announcing your goals publicly can actually reduce your motivation to achieve them. The social satisfaction of telling others creates a premature sense of accomplishment. Sun Tzu would appreciate this insight. Keep your plans hidden until they're realized. The principle of deception also applies to managing perceptions. In a competitive job market, you cultivate a professional image that emphasizes your strengths while strategically minimizing attention to weaknesses you're still developing. This isn't dishonesty, it's strategic positioning. Sun Tzu also warned about being deceived. He emphasized the importance of seeing through enemy deceptions by gathering intelligence from multiple sources, questioning assumptions, and remaining adaptable when reality doesn't match expectations. The supreme art, winning without fighting. Sun Tzu declared, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." Thus, the highest form of generalship is to balk the enemy's plans. Next best is to prevent the junction of the enemy's forces. Next is to attack the enemy's army in the field. The worst policy is to besiege walled cities. This principle revolutionizes how we think about conflict. Most people assume that conflict means confrontation. Sun Tzu taught that the truly skilled strategist arranges circumstances so that confrontation becomes unnecessary. In modern business, this might mean creating such strong differentiation that you don't compete directly with rivals. Apple doesn't compete primarily on price. They position themselves in a category where direct comparison becomes difficult. They won by changing the battlefield. In personal relationships, winning without fighting means addressing issues before they become conflicts. It means having difficult conversations early, setting clear boundaries, and removing yourself from toxic situations rather than engaging in exhausting battles. In personal development, it means structuring your environment so that good choices become easy and bad choices become difficult. Rather than relying on willpower alone to eat healthily, you don't keep junk food in your house. You won the battle by avoiding it entirely. Sun Tzu understood that actual fighting is costly, risky, and unpredictable. Even in victory, you may suffer losses. The truly superior strategy creates conditions where the opponent recognizes defeat before engagement, or where circumstances shift so dramatically that what seemed like conflict simply dissolves. Speed and preparation. Sun Tzu wrote, "Quickness is the essence of war. Take advantage of the enemy's unpreparedness, travel by unexpected routes, and strike where they have taken no precautions." But he also emphasized, "The general who wins makes many calculations in his temple before the battle is fought. The general who loses makes but few calculations beforehand." These principles seem contradictory. How can you be both quick and thoroughly prepared? The answer lies in understanding that preparation enables speed. The skilled strategist invests time in planning, gathering intelligence, and creating multiple contingency plans before action becomes necessary. Then, when the moment arrives, they can move with decisive speed because the thinking has already been done. In modern life, this applies to career development. You don't wait until you're unemployed to update your resume, build your network, or develop new skills. You prepare continuously so that when opportunity arises, or when crisis strikes, you can move quickly. It applies to financial planning. You don't start thinking about retirement when you're 60. You start in your 20s, so that compound interest and strategic decisions have time to work in your favor. It applies to personal crises. The time to think about how you'll handle stress, loss, or unexpected challenges is before they happen. Mental preparation, support systems, and emotional resilience are built in advance. Sun Tzu noted that speed creates advantages. Moving quickly prevents the enemy from preparing adequate defenses, maintains momentum, and reduces the economic costs of prolonged engagement. But speed without preparation is recklessness. The art lies in balancing both. Part 3. Terrain and Positioning. The 5 types of terrain. Sun Tzu devoted an entire chapter to understanding terrain, recognizing that the environment shapes every strategic decision. He identified 5 types of terrain, each requiring different approaches. Accessible terrain is ground that both sides can traverse easily. Sun Tzu advised, on accessible ground, be first to occupy high, sunny positions, and keep your supply routes open. Then you will have the advantage when battle comes. This applies to modern markets and opportunities. When you identify accessible ground and new technology, an emerging market, a growing trend, the advantage goes to whoever establishes position first. Being an early adopter, a first mover, or a pioneering voice creates strategic advantages that later arrivals must overcome. Entangling terrain is easy to advance into but difficult to exit. Sun Tzu warned that if the enemy is unprepared, you might succeed. But if the enemy is prepared, you'll be unable to retreat and will face defeat. In modern life, these are commitments that are easy to enter but difficult to escape. Certain business partnerships, long-term contracts, relationships, or career paths. Sun Tzu's wisdom suggests carefully evaluating whether you can exit before you enter. Many people accept opportunities without considering their exit strategy, then find themselves trapped in unfavorable situations. Temporizing terrain is ground where neither side gains advantage from making the first move. Sun Tzu advised, even if the enemy offers bait, it is better not to advance. Withdraw and try to entice the enemy out of position. These are situations where patience is superior to action. In negotiation, this might mean being comfortable with silence, allowing the other party to reveal more information. In investing, it might mean waiting for better conditions rather than forcing trades in uncertain markets. Sometimes the winning move is not to move at all. Narrow passes are positions where a small force can hold off a large force. Sun Tzu advised occupying such positions first, and if the enemy hold them, only attacking if they're not fully garrisoned. In modern business, these are bottleneck positions, essential patents, exclusive relationships, scarce resources, or specialized expertise. Controlling narrow passes gives you disproportionate power relative to your size. Small companies can compete with giants by controlling key choke points. Precipitous heights represent commanding positions that offer visibility and defensive advantages. Sun Tzu advised, if the enemy occupies them first, do not follow but withdraw and try to entice them away. In modern contexts, these are positions of authority, visibility, or established market leadership. Attacking an entrenched leader directly is often futile. Better to compete in adjacent spaces where you can establish your own commanding position, then gradually expand your influence. Reading the landscape, Sun Tzu emphasized that terrain must be actively observed and interpreted. He provided specific indicators that reveal hidden information about enemy positions and intentions. When trees move, the enemy is advancing. When there are many obstacles placed in the undergrowth, the enemy wants to make us suspicious. When birds rise in flight, there is an ambush. When animals are startled, a sudden attack is coming. These specific observations reflect a deeper principle. The environment contains information if you know how to read it. Everything leaves traces. Skilled observation reveals what remains hidden to casual observers. In modern professional life, this translates to reading subtle signals in meetings, emails, and organizational behavior. Body language reveals discomfort or disagreement that words might hide. Budgetary decisions reveal actual priorities despite official statements. Changes in communication patterns signal shifts in relationships or circumstances. In markets, price movements, volume patterns, and news sentiment provide information about underlying forces of supply and demand, fear and greed, information, and manipulation. Sun Tzu wasn't advocating paranoia. He was teaching awareness. The skilled strategist developed sensitivity to the subtle indicators that reveal larger patterns and approaching changes. This awareness enables earlier responses and better positioning. Adapting to circumstances. Sun Tzu wrote, "Water shapes its course according to the ground over which it flows. The soldier works out his victory in relation to the foe he is facing. Therefore, just as water retains no constant shape, so in warfare there are no constant conditions." This principle of adaptation stands at the heart of Sun Tzu's philosophy. Rigidity leads to brittleness and eventual breaking. Flexibility leads to resilience and longevity. The water metaphor appears repeatedly in ancient Chinese philosophy. Water is soft, yet it overcomes the hardest stone to persistence and adaptability. Water finds its way around obstacles rather than confronting them directly. Water takes the shape of its container, without losing its essential nature. In modern life, adaptation means remaining attached to your goals while being flexible about methods. It means updating your strategies as circumstances change. It means recognizing when your approach isn't working and being willing to try something different. Many people fail not because their goals were wrong, but because they couldn't adapt their strategies to changing conditions. They keep doing what worked in the past, even when the environment has shifted. They mistake consistency for virtue when the situation demands evolution. Sun Tzu noted that those who can adapt to changing terrain, weather, and circumstances will find victory. Those who cannot will face defeat regardless of their strength. The strongest force can be defeated by a weaker force that better understands and adapts to conditions. This creates an interesting paradox. Success requires both consistency of purpose and flexibility of method. You must know what you're ultimately trying to achieve while remaining completely adaptable about how you achieve it. This balance, clear vision with fluid execution, characterizes strategic mastery. Part 4. Intelligence and Information, the foundation of strategy. Sun Tzu devoted his final chapter to the use of spies, but the deeper principle extends to all forms of intelligence gathering. He wrote, "What enables a wise sovereign and good general to strike and conquer and achieve things beyond the reach of ordinary men is foreknowledge. Foreknowledge, advanced information about circumstances, opponents, and conditions, determines strategic advantage more than any other factor." Sun Tzu argued that intelligence is so valuable that no expense should be spared in obtaining it. He wrote, "Hence the enlightened ruler and wise general use the most intelligent people as spies, and thereby achieve great results." Spies are the most important element in warfare, because upon them depends an army's ability to move. In modern context, spies translates to comprehensive information gathering, market research, competitor analysis, customer feedback, industry trends, technological developments, and countless other sources of actionable intelligence. Most individuals and organizations operate with insufficient information. They make decisions based on assumptions, outdated data, or limited perspectives. They substitute activity for knowledge, hoping that effort will compensate for lack of understanding. Sun Tzu recognized this tendency and warned against it. He emphasized that decisions made without proper intelligence are essentially gambling. You might win occasionally through luck, but you cannot sustain success through ignorance. The 5 types of spies. Sun Tzu identified 5 types of spies, each serving specific intelligence functions. While his terminology reflects ancient warfare, the underlying principles apply to any competitive situation requiring information. Local spies are people from the enemy district. In modern terms, these are insiders, employees who leave competitors to join your organization, industry experts with broad networks, or consultants who work across multiple companies. They provide contextual understanding that outsiders cannot easily obtain. Inward spies are enemy officials. Today, these might be sources within competitor organizations, regulatory bodies, or industry associations who can provide information about intentions, decisions, and internal dynamics. Building relationships with such sources requires trust, reciprocity, and careful ethical boundaries. Converted spies are enemy spies who have been discovered and turned. In business, this might mean identifying competitive intelligence efforts directed at your organization and providing strategic misinformation while gaining insights into what competitors want to know. Doomed spies are provided with false information that they carry back to the enemy. Sun Tzu's language here seems harsh, but the principle is clear. Sometimes you deliberately leak false information through channels that will carry at competitors, shaping their understanding and therefore their decisions. Surviving spies return with information. These are your primary intelligence assets. The people, systems, and methods that reliably provide accurate, timely information about markets, competitors, technologies, and trends. Sun Tzu emphasized that managing these intelligence networks requires the highest wisdom and integrity. Information must be protected, sources must be safeguarded, and intelligence must be analyzed carefully rather than accepted uncritically. The cost of ignorance. Sun Tzu made a striking argument. Rulers who refuse to invest in intelligence, who are stingy with resources for gathering information, are irresponsible to their people, he wrote. One who confronts his enemy without adequate intelligence is neither humane nor a good leader, and certainly will not achieve victory. The logic is straightforward. Wars cost tremendous resources and lives. Any expense that prevents or shortens conflict, or that increases the probability of victory while reducing casualties, is money well spent. Refusing to invest in intelligence while spending vast sums on armies is irrational and cruel. This principle scales to modern decisions. The person who refuses to spend time researching before making major purchases, investments, or career changes is being stingy with the most important resource, knowledge. The cost of that ignorance usually exceeds the cost of proper research many times over. Organizations that cut research budgets, ignore customer feedback, or dismiss market analysis are setting themselves up for expensive failures. The money saved by not investing in intelligence is lost many times over through poor decisions made in darkness. Sun Tzu wasn't advocating unlimited spending. He was advocating proportional investment. If the decision matters, if failure would be costly, then proper intelligence gathering should receive proportional resources. Skimping on information while investing heavily in execution is strategic malpractice. Processing information, gathering information, is only the first step. Sun Tzu emphasized that raw intelligence must be processed, verified, and analyzed. Different sources must be cross-referenced. Patterns must be identified. Deception must be detected. He warned against accepting information uncritically, especially from single sources. The skilled general tests information against multiple sources, questions assumptions, and remains alert to the possibility of deception. In modern life, this principle is more important than ever. We're flooded with information from countless sources, much of it unreliable, biased, or deliberately misleading. Social media, news outlets, marketing messages, and even well-meaning friends provide information that may be incomplete or incorrect. The art of war teaches us to approach information strategically. Ask, what is the source's motivation? What might they gain from me believing this? Is this consistent with information from other sources? Am I seeing patterns or coincidences? Am I being told what I want to hear? Sun Tzu would likely appreciate modern concepts like confirmation bias, where we selectively accept information that confirms existing beliefs while dismissing contradictory evidence. He would recognize this as a vulnerability that enemies can exploit by providing information that plays to your biases. The strategic thinker maintains healthy skepticism without becoming paranoid. They gather information from multiple sources, they test assumptions, they update beliefs when evidence warrants, and they remain comfortable with uncertainty when complete information isn't available. Part 5. Timing and Decision-Making. The Critical Moment. Sun Tzu wrote, "Opportunities multiply as they are seized." This brief statement contains profound implications for understanding timing in strategy. Most people think of opportunities as scarce, isolated events that appear randomly and must be grabbed immediately or lost forever. Sun Tzu understood something different. Opportunities create more opportunities for those who know how to leverage them. Taking one good client often leads to referrals to similar clients. Learning one new skill makes related skills easier to acquire. Successfully completing one project builds confidence, capability, and reputation that create access to better projects. Conversely, failing to act on opportunities doesn't just mean losing that particular chance. It means losing all the subsequent opportunities that would have grown from it. This creates what economists call opportunity cost. But Sun Tzu understood it at a deeper strategic level. The question becomes, how do you recognize the critical moment when action is required? Sun Tzu provided guidance through the metaphor of crossing a river. He warned that when your forces are crossing a stream, Do not advance to meet the enemy mid-crossing. Let half cross, then attack. This teaches the importance of recognizing vulnerable moments, both your own and your opponent's. In modern life, critical moments often appear during transitions, job changes, relationship changes, market shifts, technological disruptions, or personal crises. These transitions create both vulnerability and opportunity. The strategist recognizes these moments and acts accordingly, defending when vulnerable, striking when opponents are vulnerable, or positioning during neutral transitions. Decisive action. Sun Tzu emphasized that after careful preparation and intelligence gathering, action must be decisive. He wrote about momentum, using the metaphor of rolling rocks down a mountain. The force is irresistible once released, but it requires proper positioning first. Decisiveness doesn't mean recklessness. It means that once the decision point arrives, after preparation, after intelligence gathering, after positioning, you commit fully. Half measures waste the investment in preparation without achieving objectives. Many people struggle with decisiveness. They prepare endlessly without ever committing. They gather information but never feel certain enough to act. They position themselves but never actually strike. They confuse careful preparation with productive delay. Sun Tzu would recognize this as a different kind of failure. The general who never commits forces to battle, regardless of how well prepared, cannot achieve victory. At some point, calculation must yield to action. The art of war teaches that the ideal is swift action following careful preparation, long deliberation, then sudden movement, patience in positioning, then speed in execution. This creates the impression of spontaneous brilliance, but actually reflects thorough planning expressing itself through decisive action, knowing when not to act. Equally important to knowing when to act is knowing when not to act. Sun Tzu wrote, "There are roads which must not be followed, armies which must not be attacked, towns which must not be besieged, positions which must not be contested." This principle challenges the bias toward action that pervades modern culture. We're taught that success requires constant motion, continuous improvement, and aggressive pursuit of every opportunity. Sun Tzu taught something more nuanced. Sometimes the winning move is not to move. Some battles cannot be won at acceptable cost. Some opportunities carry hidden costs that outweigh potential benefits. Some conflicts are distractions from more important objectives. The strategic thinker must be comfortable saying no. No to tempting opportunities that don't align with core objectives. No to battles that drain resources without strategic value. No to actions that feel productive but don't contribute to ultimate goals. This requires clarity about what truly matters. Without clear strategic priorities, everything seems important and every opportunity seems worth pursuing. With clear priorities, most opportunities can be recognized as distractions, and most conflicts can be avoided or delegated. Sun Tzu noted that the wise general sometimes ignores the ruler's commands when those commands would lead to disaster. This takes courage, the courage to trust your strategic judgment even when pressured to act differently. In modern contexts, this might mean resisting pressure from bosses, peers, or even your own impatient impulses when you can see that waiting or withdrawing is strategically superior. The rhythm of engagement. Sun Tzu understood that conflict has natural rhythms. There are times for action and times for rest, times for engagement and times for withdrawal, times for visibility and times for concealment. He wrote about the importance of managing energy and morale. Troops are strongest in the morning, weakening as the day progresses. Therefore, the skilled general avoids battle when his troops are tired and attacks when they're fresh, while maneuvering to engage the enemy when their energy is low. In modern life, this translates to understanding your own energy patterns and those of people you work with. Schedule important meetings and difficult work during peak energy hours. Save routine tasks for low energy periods. Recognize that decision quality deteriorates with fatigue, so important decisions should be made when you're fresh. It also means recognizing that life requires sustainable rhythms of exertion and recovery. The culture of constant hustle ignores this ancient wisdom. Sun Tzu would recognize that armies cannot march continuously without rest, and neither can individuals sustain peak performance without recovery periods. The strategic approach to energy management creates cyclical patterns of intense focus followed by deliberate rest, ambitious projects followed by consolidation periods, rapid growth followed by integration phases. This rhythm allows sustained high performance over time, rather than a boom-bust pattern of unsustainable intensity followed by burnout. Part 6. Leadership and Management. The 5 Dangerous Faults. Sun Tzu identified 5 dangerous character flaws in leaders that lead to disaster. Understanding these faults provides a framework for self-assessment and leadership development. First, recklessness leads to destruction. The leader who cannot restrain himself from action, who must always be doing something, who cannot wait for the right moment. This leader will eventually commit his forces to disasters that careful patience would have avoided. Second, cowardice leads to capture. The leader who cannot commit when the moment requires action, who always finds reasons to delay or withdraw, who avoids necessary risks. This leader will eventually find himself cornered with no options remaining. Notice the balance Sun Tzu strikes here. Both excessive action, recklessness, and insufficient action, cowardice, are failures. Leadership requires the wisdom to know which the moment demands. Third, quick temper can be provoked. The leader who is easily angered gives opponents a weapon. They can manipulate him into rash actions by deliberately provoking emotional responses. Sun Tzu noted that anger can be productive only if it's controlled and strategic, not reactive. In modern contexts, this applies to negotiations, conflicts, and competitive situations. If your opponents know that certain actions or words will make you angry and cause you to act impulsively, they control you. Emotional self-regulation becomes a strategic capability, not just a personal virtue. Fourth, excessive pride leads to humiliation. The leader who is sensitive about honor, who responds strongly to insults or challenges to reputation, can be manipulated through that sensitivity. Pride makes you predictable, and predictability is a strategic liability. This doesn't mean leaders should have no pride or self-respect. It means that excessive concern with how others perceive you or the need to respond to every slight or challenge creates vulnerabilities that skilled opponents will exploit. Fifth, excessive concern for his men leads to worry and anxiety. This seems counterintuitive at first. Isn't concern for your people a virtue? Sun Tzu's point is subtle. The leader who cannot accept necessary losses, who prioritizes individual well-being over mission success, will hesitate at critical moments and potentially cause greater losses in the long run. In modern leadership, this might manifest as a manager who can't make tough personnel decisions, can't give critical feedback, or can't push teams to necessary levels of performance because of excessive concern about hurt feelings or short-term stress. The result is often underperformance that ultimately harms the entire organization, including the people the leader was trying to protect. The characteristics of strong leadership. Beyond avoiding dangerous flaws, Sun Tzu outlined positive characteristics of effective leadership. These principles apply to managing others and managing yourself. The wise leader maintains discipline without cruelty. Sun Tzu emphasized that troops must respect and even fear consequences, but this should never cross into arbitrary harshness. The story of Sun Tzu executing the king's concubines might seem harsh, but it established clear consequences for clear rules applied consistently. In modern leadership, this translates to clear expectations, consistent enforcement, and proportional consequences. People can work effectively within strict frameworks if those frameworks are fair and predictable. What destroys morale is arbitrary inconsistency or disproportionate punishment. The wise leader earns loyalty through care and reward. Sun Tzu wrote, "Regard your soldiers as your children, and they will follow you into the deepest valleys. Look on them as your own beloved sons, and they will stand by you even unto death." This isn't sentimentality, it's strategic. People perform best when they believe their leader genuinely cares about their well-being. This creates loyalty that survives hardship. Modern research on organizational psychology confirms this ancient wisdom. Employees are most engaged when they feel valued by their leaders. The wise leader leads by example. Sun Tzu emphasized that generals must share the hardships of their troops. A leader who demands sacrifices he isn't willing to make himself will never command true loyalty. This principle applies in families, organizations, and any situation requiring collective effort toward difficult goals. The wise leader communicates clearly and ensures comprehension. Remember Sun Tzu's demonstration with the palace women. He explained commands clearly, demonstrated them, confirmed understanding, then held people accountable. Many modern leaders skip these steps, creating confusion, then blame others for not following unclear instructions. In modern contexts, these are positions of authority, visibility, or established market leadership. Attacking an entrenched leader directly is often futile. Better to compete in adjacent spaces where you can establish your own commanding position, then gradually expand your influence. Reading the landscape, Sun Tzu emphasized that terrain must be actively observed and interpreted. He provided specific indicators that reveal hidden information about enemy positions and intentions. When trees move, the enemy is advancing. When there are many obstacles placed in the undergrowth, the enemy wants to make us suspicious. When birds rise in flight, there is an ambush. When animals are startled, a sudden attack is coming. These specific observations reflect a deeper principle. The environment contains information if you know how to read it. Everything leaves traces. Skilled observation reveals what remains hidden to casual observers. In modern professional life, this translates to reading subtle signals in meetings, emails, and organizational behavior. Body language reveals discomfort or disagreement that words might hide. Budgetary decisions reveal actual priorities despite official statements. Changes in communication patterns signal shifts in relationships or circumstances. In markets, price movements, volume patterns, and news sentiment provide information about underlying forces of supply and demand, fear and greed, information, and manipulation. Sun Tzu wasn't advocating paranoia. He was teaching awareness. The skilled strategist developed sensitivity to the subtle indicators that reveal larger patterns and approaching changes. This awareness enables earlier responses and better positioning. Adapting to circumstances. Sun Tzu wrote, "Water shapes its course according to the ground over which it flows. The soldier works out his victory in relation to the foe he is facing. Therefore, just as water retains no constant shape, so in warfare there are no constant conditions." This principle of adaptation stands at the heart of Sun Tzu's philosophy. Rigidity leads to brittleness and eventual breaking. Flexibility leads to resilience and longevity. The water metaphor appears repeatedly in ancient Chinese philosophy. Water is soft, yet overcomes the hardest stone through persistence and adaptability. Water finds its way around obstacles rather than confronting them directly. Water takes the shape of its container without losing its essential nature. In modern life, adaptation means remaining attached to your goals while being flexible about methods. It means updating your strategies as circumstances change. It means recognizing when your approach isn't working and being willing to try something different. Many people fail not because their goals were wrong, but because they couldn't adapt their strategies to changing conditions. They keep doing what worked in the past, even when the environment has shifted. They mistake consistency for virtue when the situation demands evolution. Sun Tzu noted that those who can adapt to changing terrain, weather, and circumstances will find victory. Those who cannot will face defeat regardless of their strength. The strongest force can be defeated by a weaker force that better understands and adapts to conditions. This creates an interesting paradox. Success requires both consistency of purpose and flexibility of method. You must know what you're ultimately trying to achieve while remaining completely adaptable about how you achieve it. This balance, clear vision with fluid execution, characterizes strategic mastery. Part 7. Competitive Strategy. Direct and Indirect Approaches. Sun Tzu made a fundamental distinction between direct and indirect approaches to competition. He wrote, "In battle, there are only the direct and indirect, yet these two in combination give rise to endless possibilities. The direct approach means confronting opponents head-on, matching strength against strength, competing on established terms. The indirect approach means finding ways around direct confrontation, competing on different terms, or changing the nature of competition entirely. Most competitors default to direct approaches because they're obvious and conventional. They compete on price or features or marketing spend, whatever the established competitive dimensions are. This often leads to mutually destructive competition, where everyone suffers. Sun Tzu taught that the indirect approach is usually superior. Find where competitors are weak. Compete on dimensions they don't expect. Change the rules of engagement. create new categories where direct comparison becomes difficult. In modern business, this might mean competing on convenience when others compete on price, or competing on specialization when others try to be generalists, or competing on experience when others compete on features. The indirect approach finds asymmetric advantages that make your strengths relevant and opponents' strengths less relevant. This principle applies beyond business. In personal development, the indirect approach might mean improving sleep and stress management to increase cognitive performance, rather than trying to study harder with the same depleted resources. In relationships, it might mean improving your own emotional regulation rather than trying to change the other person's behavior directly. Competitive intelligence. Sun Tzu emphasized knowing your competitive position relative to others. This requires accurate assessment of comparative strengths and weaknesses, not wishful thinking or selective perception. He warned against both overconfidence and excessive caution. Overconfidence leads to engaging in battles you can't win. Excessive caution leads to missing opportunities where you could prevail. Accurate assessment enables appropriate action. In modern contexts, competitive intelligence means understanding not just what competitors are doing, but why they're doing it, what constraints they face, what their strategic priorities are, and where they're vulnerable. This requires gathering information from multiple sources and analyzing patterns. Sun Tzu particularly emphasized understanding when you're outmatched. He wrote, "If your forces are equal, you can engage the enemy. If you're fewer, you can avoid the enemy. If you're inferior, you can withdraw from the enemy." This seems obvious, but many individuals and organizations ignore this wisdom. They persist in competing against superior forces through sheer determination or optimism. Sun Tzu would call this foolishness. When you're outmatched, the strategic response is to avoid direct competition, withdraw to better ground, or find ways to change the terms of engagement, creating competitive advantage. Sun Tzu taught that victory goes to those who create advantages before battle begins. He wrote, "Victorious warriors win first and then go to war. Defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win." This profound statement inverts how most people think about competition. They engage first, then try to figure out how to win. The strategist figures out how to win first, then engages only when victory is probable. Creating advantage requires positioning. Sun Tzu emphasized occupying high ground, securing supply lines, and choosing favorable terrain. In modern terms, this might mean building brand strength before launching new products, developing deep expertise before entering competitive markets, or building financial reserves before taking risks. It also requires timing. Sun Tzu noted that the general who reaches the battlefield first and awaits the enemy will be fresh. The general who reaches the battlefield second and rushes into battle will be tired. The advantage goes to those who can wait rather than those forced to react. In practical terms, this might mean entering markets when you're ready rather than when competitors force your hand. It might mean launching initiatives when conditions are favorable rather than rushing to meet arbitrary deadlines. It might mean accepting short-term costs to achieve better long-term positioning. Creating advantage also means understanding relative strengths. You don't need to be superior in all dimensions, only in the dimensions that matter for the specific competition at hand. The strategic question is, where can I be decisively superior, and how can I make those dimensions matter most? Sustaining competitive position. Sun Tzu understood that winning once is insufficient. Sustainable success requires maintaining advantageous position over time. This creates different strategic imperatives than achieving initial victory. He emphasized that those in strong positions must avoid complacency. Success creates wealth and comfort, which can breed softness. The successful organization must maintain discipline, continue innovation, and resist the temptation to rest on past achievements. He also noted that those in strong positions become targets. Success attracts competitors and imitators. The strategies that created initial advantage often become less effective once they're widely observed and copied. Therefore, sustained success requires continuous adaptation and innovation. In modern terms, this explains why market leaders often stumble. Their initial advantages, innovative products, superior service, efficient operations, get copied by competitors. Meanwhile, their own organization becomes bureaucratic and resistant to change. Sun Tzu would recognize this pattern and advise constant vigilance and renewal. Sustaining position also requires managing reputation carefully. Sun Tzu noted that reputation can be leveraged strategically. Enemies may surrender or avoid battle based on your reputation alone, but reputation can also create expectations and constraints. The feared competitor may find that others gang up against them. The trusted partner may find their flexibility limited by others' expectations. The strategic approach to reputation is conscious and deliberate. You cultivate the reputation that serves your purposes, rather than accidentally acquiring whatever reputation emerges from your actions. This might mean demonstrating strength to deter challengers, or demonstrating flexibility to attract partners, or demonstrating reliability to retain customers, whatever serves strategic objectives. Part 8. Crisis and Adaptation. Desperate Ground. Sun Tzu identified 9 types of strategic ground, but one deserves special attention: desperate ground, where survival itself is at stake. He wrote, "When there is no escape, this is desperate ground. On desperate ground, fight." This seems simple, but the strategic principle is profound. When you have nothing to lose, fight with complete commitment. When you have much to lose, calculate carefully. The worst strategic position is having much to lose while fighting as if you have nothing to lose, or having nothing to lose while fighting timidly. Sun Tzu noted that soldiers fight most fiercely when they believe there's no alternative. The general who wants fierce commitment sometimes deliberately creates desperate circumstances, burning boats after landing, for example, so retreat becomes impossible. With no way back, the only way is forward. In modern life, desperate ground might be financial crisis, career failure, relationship breakdown, or health emergency. These moments demand total commitment to recovery or transformation. Half measures don't work on desperate ground. You either commit fully or fail. But Sun Tzu also taught that wise generals avoid desperate ground when possible. They position themselves and their forces, so they maintain options and flexibility. Desperation may create fierce commitment, but it also creates high risk. Better to fight from strength than from desperation. Responding to crisis. When crisis arrives despite preparation, Sun Tzu taught specific principles for response. First, maintain composure. Panic destroys rational decision-making and spreads throughout organizations. The leader must project calm confidence, even in dire circumstances. Second, assess quickly and accurately. Crisis creates fog, confusion, contradictory information, emotional reactions. Cut through this fog with focused intelligence gathering. What is actually happening? What are real threats versus perceived threats? What resources remain available? Third, prioritize ruthlessly. In crisis, you cannot address everything. Identify what matters most for survival and focus there. Sun Tzu would recognize the modern concept of triage, sorting problems by severity and addressing the most critical first. Fourth, act decisively once assessment is complete. Crisis rewards swift action. Continued deliberation after initial assessment usually just wastes time. Sun Tzu emphasized that speed and execution often matters more than perfection in planning, especially when circumstances are changing rapidly. Fifth, maintain flexibility. Initial actions may not work as intended. New information may emerge. Circumstances may shift. The ability to adapt quickly separates those who survive crisis from those who don't. Learning from defeat. Sun Tzu acknowledged that even skilled strategists sometimes face defeat. The question isn't whether you'll ever lose, but how you'll respond to loss. He emphasized analyzing defeats carefully to understand what went wrong. Was the strategy flawed? Was the execution poor? Did circumstances change unexpectedly? Was intelligence inadequate? Understanding causes prevents repeating mistakes. But he also warned against excessive dwelling on past defeats. Learn quickly, adjust, and move forward. The general who fights yesterday's battle instead of today's battle will lose today as well. In modern contexts, this applies to business failures, personal setbacks, relationship problems, and any situation where things didn't work out as hoped. The strategic approach extracts lessons efficiently, then redirects energy toward future success rather than past failure. This requires emotional maturity. Defeat triggers shame, anger, and desire to blame others. These emotional responses interfere with learning. The strategist must be able to acknowledge mistakes objectively, learn from them, and move forward without excessive emotional weight, turning crisis into opportunity. Sun Tzu taught that skilled strategists can sometimes turn disadvantage into advantage. Crisis creates change, and change creates opportunity for those prepared to recognize and seize it. When competitors face the same crisis, the one who adapts most effectively gains relative advantage. When industries are disrupted, established players often struggle while nimble newcomers thrive. When personal life is disrupted, those who embrace change often emerge stronger than before. This doesn't mean welcoming crisis. It means recognizing that since crisis is inevitable, the strategic response is to extract whatever value it offers. Crisis clarifies what matters. It forces elimination of wasteful practices. It creates urgency that overcomes organizational inertia. It reveals who can be trusted in difficult circumstances. Sun Tzu would likely appreciate the concept of anti-fragile, systems that actually benefit from stress and volatility. The strategic approach to life builds anti-fragile capabilities, diverse skills, multiple income sources, strong relationships, good health, financial reserves, and mental resilience. These capabilities not only help survive crisis, they enable seizing opportunities that crisis creates. Part 9. Wisdom and Philosophy. The Tao of Strategy. Sun Tzu opened the art of war by identifying 5 constant factors that determine victory: the Tao, heaven, earth, the commander, and method. The first factor, the Tao or the way, represents the most fundamental strategic consideration. The Tao means alignment between leadership and people. It means shared purpose, mutual trust, and common understanding. Sun Tzu wrote that when the Tao prevails, people will follow their leaders regardless of danger. They'll sacrifice willingly because they believe in the purpose. This transcends manipulation or coercion. The Tao represents genuine alignment of interests and values. It's built through consistency, integrity, and demonstrated care. It cannot be faked or forced. In modern organizations, the Tao might be called culture, mission, or values, but those terms often represent aspiration rather than reality. True alignment is rare and precious. It enables coordinated action without constant supervision. It creates resilience through difficulty. It attracts and retains talented people. Building the Tao requires leaders who embody the values they espouse. It requires transparent communication about purpose and priorities. It requires fairness in distribution of rewards and hardships. It requires patience. Alignment cannot be rushed. Sun Tzu understood that the Tao is the most important factor because it determines everything else. With strong alignment, weaknesses in other areas can be overcome. Without it, even advantages in heaven, earth, commander, and method may prove insufficient. Natural law and strategy. Sun Tzu's second factor was heaven, which meant timing, seasons, weather, the natural cycles and conditions that cannot be controlled but must be understood and worked with. He emphasized that fighting against natural law is futile. You cannot change the weather, so you must adapt to it. You cannot stop winter, so you must prepare for it. You cannot control all circumstances, so you must remain flexible as circumstances change. This principle extends to human nature and social dynamics. Certain patterns are reliable. People respond to incentives. They seek status and security. They form alliances and rivalries. They resist change but adapt when necessary. Fighting these tendencies is wasteful. Working with them is strategic. In modern life, this might mean recognizing your own biological rhythms and working with them rather than against them. It might mean understanding market cycles and positioning accordingly. It might mean accepting that organizational change requires time and process, not just announcements and mandates. Sun Tzu would likely appreciate modern systems thinking, understanding that complex systems have inherent properties and patterns that emerge in their structure. You cannot command these systems to behave differently, but you can influence them by working with their natural tendencies rather than against them, knowing when enough is enough. Sun Tzu repeatedly warned against overextension. He taught that knowing when to stop is as important as knowing when to act. Excessive greed, excessive ambition, or excessive commitment often transforms victory into defeat. He wrote about the dangers of prolonged campaigns that drain resources and exhaust forces. Even in victory, if the cost is too high, the result is net loss. Therefore, the skilled strategist achieves objectives efficiently, then stops. In modern life, this wisdom applies to personal ambition. How much money is enough? How much status is enough? How much success is enough? Without clear answers, people sacrifice health, relationships, and peace of mind in pursuit of ever more things that never satisfy. Sun Tzu would recognize this as a strategic error. If you cannot define victory, you cannot stop when you've achieved it. You'll keep fighting indefinitely, exhausting yourself even as you accumulate wins. This doesn't mean lacking ambition. It means understanding that strategy serves purpose. When the purpose is achieved, the strategy should end. New purposes may emerge requiring new strategies, but the strategic mindset requires clarity about what you're actually trying to accomplish. The paradox of control. Throughout the art of war, Sun Tzu grapples with fundamental paradox. Control requires accepting what cannot be controlled. The leader who tries to control everything controls nothing. The leader who accepts uncertainty and works with it achieves actual influence. He wrote about how water flows around obstacles, how wind changes direction, how fire spreads unpredictably. The strategist doesn't control these forces. They understand and work with them. They position themselves to benefit from natural patterns rather than fighting against them. This wisdom challenges modern assumptions about control and management. We're taught to set clear goals, make detailed plans, and execute with discipline. All of this is valuable. But Sun Tzu understood that over-planning creates rigidity and brittleness. The strategic approach maintains clarity about ultimate objectives while remaining flexible about methods. It makes plans but holds them lightly. It sets goals but adapts them as circumstances change. It seeks influence over outcomes while accepting that complete control is impossible. This creates a different relationship with uncertainty. Instead of seeing uncertainty as a problem to be eliminated through better planning, the strategist sees it as a permanent feature reality to be navigated skillfully. This shift in perspective reduces anxiety while increasing effectiveness. Strategy is a way of being. For Sun Tzu, strategy wasn't just a set of techniques to be applied in specific situations. It was a complete approach to navigating life, a way of thinking, perceiving, and acting that becomes integrated into one's character. The strategic mind constantly observes patterns. It notices cause and effect relationships. It identifies leverage points where small actions create large results. It recognizes a difference between appearing situations and underlying realities. The strategic mind maintains perspective. It doesn't get swept up in momentary emotions or circumstances. It considers longer time horizons and broader contexts. It distinguishes between what matters and what doesn't. The strategic mind accepts imperfection. It doesn't wait for perfect information or perfect conditions. It acts with available information and adapts as more information emerges. It learns from mistakes without being paralyzed by them. The strategic mind balances opposites. It's both patient and quick, both flexible and firm, both confident and humble. It recognizes that wisdom often lies in paradox, that seemingly contradictory principles can both be true depending on circumstances. This way of being develops through practice and reflection. Reading about strategy isn't sufficient. You must apply principles, observe results, adjust understanding, and gradually internalize patterns until strategic thinking becomes natural and intuitive. Part 10. Modern Applications. Career Strategy. Sun Tzu's principles apply directly to navigating professional life. Consider his teaching about positions. Know when you're strong and when you're weak relative to competition. In career development, this means honest assessment of your skills, experience, and marketability. It means understanding industry trends and where demand is moving. It means recognizing when you're competing from strength, when your experience and skills are valuable and scarce, versus when you're competing from weakness, when many others offer similar capabilities. When competing from strength, Sun Tzu would advise direct engagement. Seek visible projects. Negotiate aggressively. Make bold moves. Your position supports these actions. When competing from weakness, he would advise indirect approaches. Develop scarce skills. Build specialized expertise. Create unique combinations of capabilities. Change the terms of competition so your existing strengths become more relevant. Sun Tzu's emphasis on intelligence gathering translates to networking, industry research, and staying informed about technological changes, market shifts, and organizational dynamics. Most people react to career events rather than anticipating them. The strategic professional continuously gathers information and spots trends early. His teaching about timing applies to when to change jobs, when to ask for promotions, when to start businesses, and when to make risky career moves. These decisions should be based on careful assessment of circumstances, not just opportunity or emotion. Business strategy. Modern business strategy owes much to Sun Tzu, though connections aren't always explicit. Concepts like competitive positioning, strategic differentiation, and building sustainable advantages all echo his teachings. His emphasis on winning without fighting translates to creating businesses so differentiated that direct competition becomes difficult. Apple doesn't compete primarily on price. They've created an ecosystem and brand that allows premium pricing despite competitors offering similar technical specifications. His teaching about speed and decisiveness appears in agile methodologies, rapid prototyping, and failing fast. The idea is to test concepts quickly, learn from results, and iterate, rather than spending years planning before executing. His emphasis on intelligence gathering manifests in market research, customer development, competitive analysis, and data-driven decision-making. The businesses that understand their markets, customers, and competitors deeply tend to outperform those operating on intuition alone. His warnings about prolonged campaigns apply to businesses that burn through capital without reaching sustainability. Many startups fail not because their ideas are bad, but because they run out of resources before achieving product market fit. Sun Tzu would recognize this as poor strategic timing and resource management. His teaching about maintaining flexibility while pursuing clear objectives appears in companies that maintain strong vision while remaining adaptable about tactics. Amazon's customer obsession remains constant while their business model evolves dramatically. Netflix's focus on entertainment remains constant while their delivery method transformed from mail to streaming. Relationship strategy. Applying the art of war to relationships may seem cold, but Sun Tzu's wisdom about human nature, conflict, and cooperation provides valuable guidance. His teaching about knowing yourself and others applies directly. Most relationship problems stem from unrealistic expectations based on poor understanding of yourself, your partner, or what relationships actually require. Strategic self-knowledge means understanding your needs, preferences, communication style, emotional triggers, and relationship patterns. Strategic knowledge of others means understanding their background, values, communication style, and needs, without projecting your own assumptions onto them. His emphasis on winning without fighting translates to addressing issues before they become conflicts, having difficult conversations early, setting clear boundaries, and removing yourself from incompatible situations rather than trying to force fit. His teaching about terrain applies to understanding the context of relationships. Some relationships exist on favorable ground, shared values, compatible lifestyles, mutual respect. Others exist on difficult terrain, conflicting priorities, poor communication, fundamental incompatibility. Strategy means recognizing which terrain you're on and acting accordingly. His emphasis on timing applies to when to commit to relationships, when to address problems, when to end relationships that aren't working. Many people stay too long in bad situations or leave too quickly when problems are solvable. Strategic thinking helps distinguish between these scenarios. His teaching about adaptation means recognizing that relationships evolve. The relationship that worked when you were both 20 might not work when you're 40. Partners grow and change. The strategic approach accepts this evolution and adapts rather than trying to freeze relationships in their initial state. Personal development strategy. Sun Tzu's framework provides powerful guidance for personal growth and self-improvement. His teaching about knowing yourself applies to honest self-assessment. What are your actual strengths and weaknesses? What patterns do you repeatedly fall into? What do you say you value versus what your actions reveal you actually value? Most people avoid this honest reckoning, preferring comfortable illusions. His emphasis on positioning applies to arranging your environment for success. Rather than relying on willpower, strategic personal development means structuring circumstances so desired behaviors become easy and undesired behaviors become difficult. This is the indirect approach applied to habits and behavior change. His teaching about intelligence gathering means seeking feedback, tracking progress objectively, and remaining open to information that contradicts your self-perception. Most people avoid or dismiss information that challenges their self-image. The strategic individual actively seeks such information because it reveals blind spots. His emphasis on speed and decisiveness applies to taking action once you've identified what needs to change. Many people endlessly contemplate self-improvement without actually implementing changes. Analysis becomes a sophisticated form of procrastination. Strategic personal development means deliberating thoughtfully, but then acting decisively. His teaching about sustainable campaigns applies to avoiding burnout. Massive unsustainable efforts followed by collapse is poor strategy. Better to make consistent, moderate efforts over time. This applies to fitness, learning, career development, and virtually all long-term objectives. His wisdom about accepting defeat and learning from it applies to viewing failures as feedback rather than identity. Everyone faces setbacks. The strategic response is extracting lessons quickly and moving forward rather than dwelling in shame or blame. Health and wellness strategy. Sun Tzu's principles offer unexpected insights for health and wellness, particularly his emphasis on preparation, sustainability, and working with natural patterns rather than against them. His teaching about knowing yourself applies to understanding your body's signals, patterns, and needs. Most people are remarkably disconnected from their physical state. They override fatigue signals, ignore pain, and push through exhaustion. Strategic health means paying attention to feedback from your body and responding appropriately. His emphasis on terrain and conditions applies to recognizing how environment affects health. Sleep quality depends on bedroom conditions. Diet depends on what food is available and convenient. Exercise depends on accessibility and enjoyment. Strategic health improvement often means changing environment rather than just trying harder with willpower. His teaching about timing applies to understanding circadian rhythms, recovery cycles, and natural variation in energy and capacity. Training hard every day is poor strategy. Strategic fitness includes planned recovery. Eating the same way every day ignores natural variation in hunger and activity. Strategic nutrition adapts to actual needs. His warning against prolonged campaigns applies to avoiding crash diets, extreme exercise programs, and other unsustainable approaches that might produce short-term results but inevitably fail. Strategic health improvement focuses on sustainable practices that can be maintained indefinitely. His teaching about the indirect approach applies to addressing health through multiple pathways. Want to lose weight? Consider improving sleep, which affects hunger hormones. Want more energy? Consider stress management, which affects inflammation and fatigue. The indirect approach often proves more effective than direct assault on symptoms. His emphasis on intelligence gathering applies to tracking metrics, experimenting systematically, and learning what actually works for your particular body, rather than just following generic advice. Part 11. Deeper Wisdom. The Strategy of Non-Action. Sun Tzu's influence from Taoist philosophy appears in his appreciation for strategic non-action. This doesn't mean passivity or laziness. It means understanding that sometimes the most effective action is doing nothing. He wrote about how the skilled commander sometimes wins by waiting while the enemy exhausts himself. The enemy makes mistakes when under pressure to act. The patient strategist allows this to unfold rather than interrupting the process. In modern life, strategic non-action might mean not responding to provocations, allowing others to reveal themselves through their actions, or waiting for better circumstances rather than forcing issues prematurely. This requires confidence and discipline. The pressure to do something is intense, especially in crisis. Leaders who cannot act decisively are often criticized, but sometimes a decisive action is to deliberately not act until the right moment arrives. Sun Tzu would recognize the wisdom in modern concepts like strategic patience or playing the long game. Many competitive situations favor those who can wait rather than those who must act immediately. The one with less urgency often has negotiating advantage. The one who can afford to walk away often gets better terms. This principle also applies to personal decision-making. Many choices improve if given time. The urge to decide immediately often stems from anxiety rather than necessity. Strategic patience allows emotions to settle, additional information to emerge, and better options to appear. The limits of strategy. Sun Tzu was a strategic genius, but he also recognized strategy's limitations. He acknowledged that even perfect strategy cannot guarantee victory. Circumstances change. Opponents make unexpected moves. Chance plays a role. He emphasized that strategy improves probability of success but cannot ensure it. This creates an important distinction between outcomes and decisions. You can make strategically sound decisions that lead to poor outcomes through bad luck or changed circumstances. You can make poor decisions that lead to good outcomes through good luck. The strategic mind evaluates decisions by their quality at the time they were made, not just by their outcomes. This prevents both false confidence from lucky successes and false doubt from unlucky failures. Sun Tzu also recognized that strategy requires implementation. Brilliant plans mean nothing without capable execution. Many people are better at planning than doing. The art of war emphasizes that both are necessary. He acknowledged that strategy alone cannot overcome massive disadvantages. If you're outnumbered 10-1 with no terrain advantage, no superior position, and no way to divide enemy forces, strategy cannot save you. At some point, material reality matters more than clever planning. This creates humility about strategy's role. It's necessary but not sufficient. It improves your position but doesn't guarantee success. Understanding these limits prevents both over-reliance on planning and dismissal of strategy's value. Matrix organizations, where people report to multiple managers, consistently create stress, confusion, and inefficiency. He emphasized that different situations require different organizational structures. Terrain, weather, enemy characteristics, and mission objectives all influence optimal organization. The strategists adapt structure to circumstances rather than forcing circumstances to fit organizational preferences. In modern contexts, this might mean different team structures for different projects, flexible working arrangements based on individual circumstances, or willingness to reorganize when situations change. Many organizations resist this flexibility, maintaining structures long after they become obsolete. Part 12, Final Reflections. The 2,000-year test. The art of war has survived over 2,000 years and been adopted across cultures, situations, and applications far beyond ancient Chinese warfare. This remarkable longevity demands explanation. Some texts survive through institutional support, religious texts preserved by churches, classical texts preserved by universities. The art of war survived primarily because people found it useful. Generation after generation, culture after culture, people discovered that its principles worked. This utility stems from Sun Tzu's focus on fundamental patterns of competition, conflict, and human nature. These patterns don't change with technology or culture. Whether you're a Chinese general in 500 BCE, a Japanese samurai in 1600 CE, or a modern entrepreneur, you face similar strategic questions about when to fight, how to position, how to understand opponents, and how to achieve objectives efficiently. The text's brevity contributes to its longevity. At roughly 6,000 characters, it's concise enough to memorize yet rich enough to provide guidance on countless situations. This compression forces readers to think rather than passively consuming instructions. Each principle must be interpreted and applied to specific circumstances. The text's philosophical depth also contributes. Sun Tzu wasn't just describing tactics. He was exploring fundamental questions about conflict, human nature, and the relationship between knowledge and action. This depth allows repeated reading to reveal new insights as your understanding develops. Modern relevance. Some dismiss the art of war as ancient wisdom irrelevant to modern life. This criticism misunderstands both the text and modernity. Yes, Sun Tzu wrote about military conflict in ancient China, but his principles address timeless aspects of competition and human nature. The specific examples may be dated, but the underlying patterns remain. In some ways, modern life makes strategic thinking more important, not less. Ancient life offered fewer choices. Most people lived where they were born, did what their parents did, married within their village. Strategic thinking had limited application for most people. Modern life presents continuous strategic choices: where to live, what to study, which career pursue, whom to marry, how to invest, how to spend time. Every day presents decisions that compound over time into dramatically different life trajectories. Modern competition is also more complex. Globalization means you compete with people worldwide. Technology creates rapid change that disrupts established positions. Information abundance means anyone can acquire knowledge that was once scarce. These conditions make strategic thinking more valuable, not less. Sun Tzu's principles provide frameworks for navigating this complexity. His emphasis on positioning helps with career and business strategy. His teaching about timing helps with investment and major life decisions. His wisdom about knowing yourself and others helps with relationships and personal development. The specific applications change. Sun Tzu didn't write about remote work, cryptocurrency, or social media. But his principles about positioning, timing, information, and competition apply to all of these domains. What Sun Tzu doesn't teach. Understanding the art of war also requires recognizing its limits and what it doesn't address. Sun Tzu doesn't provide a complete moral philosophy. He assumes certain goals, survival, victory, prosperity, but doesn't deeply question whether these goals are worthy. He teaches how to achieve objectives efficiently, but not which objectives to pursue. This isn't a criticism of Sun Tzu. He was writing a practical manual for generals, not a comprehensive philosophical system. But it means readers must apply their own moral framework. Strategic skill can serve evil purposes as easily as good ones. Sun Tzu doesn't deeply address questions of meaning, purpose, or human flourishing beyond survival and success. He teaches how to win conflicts, but not whether winning particular conflicts contributes to a life well lived. He doesn't address many important human capacities: love, creativity, contemplation, spirituality. These aren't strategic in Sun Tzu's sense, yet they constitute much of what makes life meaningful. He doesn't provide guidance for situations where strategic thinking might be inappropriate. Some moments call for spontaneity rather than calculation. Some relationships are cheapened by strategic analysis. Some experiences are valuable precisely because they're not goal-directed. Therefore, Sun Tzu's wisdom should be integrated with other sources of guidance about how to live. He provides a how of achieving objectives, but you must determine the what and why from elsewhere, from philosophy, religion, personal reflection, or other sources of wisdom. The invitation. The art of war ultimately extends an invitation to live more consciously, more strategically, more effectively, to move through life with greater awareness, better decisions, and less unnecessary suffering. This invitation doesn't require perfection. Sun Tzu himself faced uncertainties, made mistakes, and operated with incomplete information. Strategic mastery isn't about never failing. It's about improving your odds, learning from experience, and gradually developing wisdom that makes life more manageable. The invitation also doesn't require constant calculation. Integration of strategic principles eventually becomes natural and intuitive. You develop instincts that guide good decisions without deliberate analysis. Strategy becomes a way of being rather than a set of techniques to consciously apply. What the invitation requires is commitment to learning, honest self-assessment, and willingness to change approaches that aren't working. It requires patience. Wisdom develops over time through practice and reflection. It requires humility, recognizing that you don't already know everything, and remaining open to new understanding. Most people drift through life reacting to circumstances, following conventions, and hoping things work out. Sun Tzu invites something different, taking conscious responsibility for navigating your path, making deliberate choices about direction and method, and continuously learning how to move through the world more skillfully. This path isn't easier in the short term. It requires thought, discipline, and willingness to make difficult decisions. But over time, strategic living becomes easier than reactive living. Better decisions compound into better circumstances. Wisdom reduces suffering. Skill increases effectiveness. The question is whether you'll accept the invitation, whether you'll commit to developing strategic wisdom, not just reading about it, whether you'll practice these principles, observe results, refine understanding, and gradually integrate strategic thinking into your character. Sun Tzu can't make that choice for you. He can only point toward what's possible for those who commit to this path. We've traveled through the wisdom of Sun Tzu, from the mysterious general of ancient China to applications in modern life. We've explored principles of positioning, timing, intelligence, adaptation, leadership, and competition. We've examined how ancient strategic wisdom illuminates contemporary challenges in career, business, relationships, and personal development. But this video isn't an end, it's a beginning. Understanding the art of war intellectually is useful, but transformation comes from application. The principles become powerful when integrated into daily life through practice, reflection, and gradual refinement. As you continue your journey, remember Sun Tzu's central teachings. Know yourself and know your circumstances with honest clarity. Position yourself advantageously before conflict begins. Move with speed when the moment is right, but wait patiently when timing is poor. Gather intelligence continuously and update understanding as circumstances change. Adapt flexibly while maintaining clarity about ultimate objectives. Win without fighting whenever possible, recognizing that actual conflict is costly even in victory. Remember, too, that strategy serves life, not the other way around. These principles help you navigate challenges, achieve objectives, and reduce unnecessary suffering. But they don't define what makes life meaningful or worthwhile. Let strategy inform your methods while looking elsewhere for guidance about purposes worth pursuing. The ancient strategists understood something profound. Life is complex, uncertain, and often difficult. But within that complexity, certain patterns emerge. Competition follows recognizable dynamics. Conflict unfolds according to underlying principles. Success and failure are not random. They reflect the quality of preparation, positioning, timing, and adaptation. This understanding is empowering. You cannot control everything, but you can influence much more than most people realize. You cannot guarantee success, but you can dramatically improve your odds. You cannot eliminate uncertainty, but you can navigate it more skillfully. 2,000 years ago, Sun Tzu offered wisdom about how to move through the world effectively. That wisdom remains as relevant today as when it was written. The specifics change. We face different challenges in different contexts with different tools. But the underlying patterns of competition, conflict, and human nature remain remarkably constant. So take what resonates from this journey through the art of war. Practice principles that seem useful. Experiment with applications in your own life. Observe results carefully and refine your understanding. Gradually integrate strategic thinking until it becomes natural rather than forced. And remember, you're not seeking perfection. You're seeking progress, wisdom, and skillfulness in navigating the endlessly complex game of life. Each better decision, each improved position, each wise adaptation contributes to that development. The battlefield may be different than when Sun Tzu walked the earth, but the principles of strategy, of thoughtful positioning, careful timing, honest assessment, and skillful adaptation remain as powerful as ever for those willing to study, practice, and integrate them. Thank you for taking this journey through ancient wisdom and modern application. May the principles of the art of war serve you well as you navigate your own strategic challenges. May you know yourself and your circumstances with clarity. May you position yourself advantageously. May you act with wisdom and timing. And may you achieve your objectives with efficiency, skill, and minimal unnecessary conflict. The path continues from here. Walk it consciously, strategically, and well. Rest peacefully. Think clearly, and move forward with wisdom.